Hello, hello. We are here.
Hi.
Now you can unmute yourself. Okay, sorry.
Hello.
Hello. I see people joining, and here we are. Very, very unusual time of our morning coffee. I mean, it's on your side, Florida time, right, Dora?
It is. It's about 9
morning.
o'clock in the morning.
Okay, so for you it's morning coffee. For us it's like afternoon coffee, but it's rainy in Gdańsk, at least in Poland. So I really need coffee. So it's good we are here. And so today we have our guest, Dora Boussias. Is it correct pronunciation?
Yeah, it's Dora Boussias.
Yes, and Dora, we met in Building Business Capability Conference. We met actually in Miami, right? 2 years ago.
I think it was two
Yes.
or three, maybe 2 years ago. Yes.
And then we met again this year in May in Las Vegas. And when I met Dora, Dora did a few presentations always during this Building Business Capability conferences. She was involved in the topic of data transformation. So I met you as a transformation leader and also as a mentor of women in tech. I remember we talked a lot. And this year I said, oh my God, I can connect these dots finally, as we, together with Matt, we do for some time strategy iteration in the company. So it is actually executing the strategy by first defining goals as OKRs and then building teams around that and providing habits into organization to make sure that strategy is really iterated. So we check as fast as possible our strategy and of course define and verify. That's what we do within the OKR Poland. And then I heard your few presentations actually about data transformation, about what you do with business people, with founders, with C-level of huge companies in USA. And I said, oh my God, that's actually so much connected with what we are doing, because you actually also transform organization in a sense of data. Of course, I will ask you in a moment what you are doing exactly, if I understood it correctly. And I thought, oh my God, that's what we need, because when we introduce OKRs in organization, what we have usually is the huge problem of that company doesn't have data or do not measure in the right way or do not measure at all, or even have a fear of measuring whatever, because it will show something they do not want to maybe even know. Or often it's a problem where to start, really where to start. And then I thought, okay, now I need to talk to Dora, and here you are. Dora, thank you for agreeing to meet with us in your morning. And could you tell a few words about yourself?
Of course.
And by the way, before you start, I will also ask everyone. So guys, if you are here together with us, please ask your questions. Whatever you have, we will answer during our easy coffee with OKR today. So Dora, please.
Thank you, Lena. I am actually very excited to be here. I got to meet Matt through you as well. I'm so excited to be here having coffee with all of you. And yeah, thank you for bringing that out, because I love when we're engaging with the audience and get the questions and everything. It makes for a better dialogue, right? And that's why we're here, to just have that chat. And maybe, yes, actually, you said, Lena, I talk a lot about data transformation, data strategy. In fact, the question that you said, where does one start? Data strategy, people are a little bit, sometimes, maybe a little bit of a fear. Where to start? I don't know. It's overwhelming. There's so much to do. And in fact, one of the sessions that I had even on the conference was a half-a-day tutorial about demystifying data strategy. What does it mean? How it connects to business strategy? Where does one start? What should we look out for? What are some traps that people fall in, right? So myself, even though I talk a lot about data, and you're right, I also advocate about women in tech. Myself, I've been in this almost 30 years now. And although I talk a lot about data, really I've played every role in IT. And my 28 plus years of technology, and I've been a system software programmer. I've been always data, right, and program and project management and product manager, and really multiple times, especially when it comes to data, that has been traditionally one of the afterthoughts. People think of data as the bits and the bytes and how we do it tactically every day. But then taking a step back, it's how do we get value out of this? How do we manage this data, right? So pitching that as a strategy and then building it from the ground up, that's something that I've done a couple of times in my career for different organizations that you said. And it's a lot of fun because, to your point, we want to make sure we connect that to the business and what the business needs, and get the value from that data, get the potential. But as we're doing that, what I found is it's a big transformational program because it's an afterthought, because people don't think of how we leverage the best of data in that way, which involves a lot of changing a little bit of habits, working together across teams. So we can get more into that, but yes, lots about data. I've done a lot of enterprise architecture as well. So all of that technology and architecture informs a lot of my thinking and doing. But it's more about, demystify that area and have a thoughtful plan that we can execute against, so that we have those measurable goals and we see the value that we get. And I'm gonna finish by just saying this one thing. Even though I've been in IT for 28 plus years right now, first and foremost, I think of myself as a business person. Not doing data for the sake of data, not doing technology or OKRs or whatever it is that we're doing for the sake of doing that. It's about how do we help our business, right? So my North Star is, what is the business value that I'm trying? What is the business problem that I'm trying to solve? The business opportunity that I'm trying to create and innovate with? And then how do I connect that domain expertise and ways of doing things to that, so that we get the returns from it.
Wow, so that's unusual to like be 12 for 28 years in the software and think like for yourself as a business person. That's from the beginning. It's very, very unusual.
It's not from day one, but it's from the early years. I started as a mainframe COBOL programmer, actually, Matt.
Oh, wow.
And what we were doing, the team that I was part of, was doing COBOL, but was working and generating financial statements, financial reports that I remember we were delivering them. I was on the first floor. It was the headquarters building, 3-story. So the CEO, the CFO, the COO, all of the C-suite was sitting on the third floor. So I was fresh out of college, right? My interest in turning into a full-time job. I was working on these financial reports coming out of our mainframe. And I remember, having them be accurate, run them up to the third floor for the CFO, right? And people were making decisions on this. This was a retailer. One of the things I didn't say, in my career throughout, I got exposure to retail, but also I've got a lot of exposure to financial services and healthcare, medical devices, a little bit of insurance. Again, I'm old, 28 plus years, almost 30 years. But what happened, what connected in my head those first few years was that, wow, these people are looking at these reports and what they tell them. It is so important. Like, my project manager would make sure, my director at the time, run it to the third floor to give it to the CFO, and all the word about is it accurate, is it not? So it clicked for me. People, chief executive, C-suite is looking at this, and they're making decisions based on what they see and hear. This is data. So garbage in, garbage out. If this is not good, it will lead to bad decisions, or it will take us down the road approach. So I was able to make that connection earlier on, which is why I've always been passionate. I've been passionate about two things in my career. One is that data, again, it's not the bits and the bytes that we process, that we understand it within the business context so that we get the most value out of it. And then the other thing, having been, I'm just going to round it up to 30 years, right? It's almost there. The other thing about the 30-year career is that a lot of technologies come and go. I've seen so many times when we we put products out there, we put solutions out there, and 6 months, 12 months, 18 months later, everything is broken. We have to put bandages, band-aids on it and rewire things. So for me, having a very solid foundation that can also flex and scale, it's equally important. This is why I got, from my almost 30, I got almost 20 years of that, also doing enterprise architecture. Always the deepest in data, but also just enterprise architecture. And that actually connects to just understanding the strategy. And I know we're going to talk a little bit about tools. I think that connects a little bit there as well. So it is important, yes. And I was very fortunate to make that connection early on. I made some more connections later. Maybe we can talk about them, that I think it will be beneficial for people, especially people in technology. Some of the things, at least, that I've learned over my career that help. But yes, fortunate to have had that light bulb go off at that moment.
So, okay, so maybe as you actually already mentioned what data strategy is, and maybe before we start, comparing and starting to map the both of them and how to work with them, I would propose to maybe a bit summarize and name, so what for us is a business strategy and for you is a data strategy. So we quite often talk with Matt here that for us strategy is a set of decisions which company made based on information and knowledge on which markets, on which customer do they serve, what is their USP, so how they can win in the nearest future. So it's a kind of set of decision. Matt says that this is a part, we call them policies, right? So based on these policies, we set strategy goals, which we of course can measure, and out of these goals we derive OKRs, or annual goals and quarterly goals, around which we usually organize to work on them. And I'm always wondering, because I have a lot of talks about that, people really mixing these names like data strategy, architectural strategy, whatever strategy, they overuse the word strategy in general. Especially in big companies. And so before we go there, I would like to ask you also, so because you said a bit, it's a plan, it's a set of decisions. How you define the data strategy? So what is that? If you are going to, let's say, founders or C-level, how will you define, so what is the outcome of that? What is that?
Right. So thank you for asking the question. This is really important, Milena, because you're right. This can be very confusing, right? And that's the whole idea about, let's demystify this, because really, once we take a step back and we thoughtfully just start looking at this, it's really not that scary, right? But it's a lot, and we just got to put a little bit of structure and organization around it. So you did say, I mentioned about it, and I mentioned things about, I think it's more about the goals with data strategy. I said, when we are putting a thoughtful, and that's important, it's a thoughtful plan around how we can manage the data in an organization. Now, technically speaking, a little bit more structured, there's different pillars to this, right? And I'm going to summarize a couple of the things to think about, almost like a bird's eye view, what a data strategy will entail. But I want to start by saying, yes, this is there to help us with the business. The business strategy might be, high level, this year we might want to invest in this product line, or I might want to invest in this region, and how we're going to go about it. Well, then the data strategy, if we know that's what we want to do as a business, then what data and what aspects of data do we need to focus on? And then the different aspects of the data strategy, again, how do we go deeper? So the data strategy is there to help us, like I was saying earlier, maybe create new opportunities, right? So that we have new revenue streams. The whole data monetization idea, it's very relevant to this as well. But also, as part of the data strategy, one of the goals will be, how do we get the most out of our operations? How do we streamline and cut down costs, right? how do we get more value out of the dollars that we invest in our operations, because we become more efficient, because we not keep on doing the same thing over and over, fixing it over and over when it's not supposed to be. For example, with the data quality, I don't want to keep on fixing data quality right before a report. There's a whole data quality framework where I understand what I need to do and I fix that early on in the end-to-end flow. And that then, by us understanding, recognizing that, putting the right tools and measures and practices in place, frees up time and dollars to invest in something else, and it just streamlines our operations. That could cut down cost. Also, from a risk perspective, right, there are regulations, there's compliance things, just safeguarding, making sure that we're looking at our data, we can trust it, and that way we can be proactive and avoid risk that might be hitting us. So that's high level, right? It's more revenues, cut down costs, safeguard organizational risk. But how do you do that? What is this data strategy, like you said? And if I were to take a step back, just think of it at the macro level, high level, I would say with the data strategy, you have what people are thinking of. What many people think of first and foremost is all of the tools, right? Data tools. But I have to tell you, it's not the tools. The tools, the technology strategy, even if it's just data tools, it's not equal to data strategy, right? And actually, I wrote an article last year that was published, and that was one of the top pitfalls that I put down, that data strategy is really about the business. It's not about the data, and technology strategy is not equal to data strategy. But you do have the tools, right, that can help enable a lot of what we do. But then think of things like data governance and stewardship, right? And how do we make sure that we have the right structures, the right roles, the right people, the right, policies too, but also the right mindset, and then the practices behind that, to think about how do we govern that end-to-end when we're looking at things end-to-end and working across teams and across divisions and so forth, that we start speaking the same language. Because master data management, it's one of those components that governance is very relevant to. And that is one of those key things that we need to think about, and how do we manage it as part of an overarching data strategy. So data governance and stewardship and quality, master data, that's all part of it. Something that we forget is what I like to refer to as information architecture. Data and information architecture, not data architecture as some people think of, oh, for this application, this ERP or this big sales CRM platform, what is my tables looking like, and what are my interfaces looking like? No, take a step back and understand. When I'm saying customer, what does that mean? What do I need to know about my customer? What are some of the dependencies in the data within the business context, right? Understand what are the touch points from a business process perspective? What do I need to know? And how do I model that in a data? That way, regardless if I'm looking at that data in my CRM platform or my ERP or my PLM or whatever the platform could be, that we all go back and have that model to help guide us. I'll give you an example very quickly. I was working for an organization many, many years ago, big project, because we had a big, kind of like an ERP system, if you think, that was looking at banking, financial information. And then we had other systems that were looking at it differently. So some of them were saying, oh, I need to have accounts, like a checking account and something like that, business account at the branch level, which were more, brick and mortar, the physical. And there were other systems that were keeping track of that at the bank level. So imagine, and I know this was many years ago, there's a lot more digital business happening right now. They can now reconcile it, because if you have it at the lower level, you can roll up from the different branches to different entities that they roll up to the big, say, Bank of America, whatever, big conglomerate bank. But then you had these other systems. The model was different. They were keeping track of all of that at the very top node, right? But they needed to report and understand and use the data to inform or drive their decisions at the lower level. Well, they couldn't reconcile it because people understood it differently. The data models in the two different systems were different. The relation that depends on the data were different. That, to me, understanding that, and understanding also key end-to-end, what are the flows? Am I getting the data from the right authoritative source? How can I simplify and streamline How do I create a data marketplace where people can go and easily find the data that they need? To me, all of that is under this pillar of data information architecture, right? And then you got all of the aspects around privacy and security and information governance, like what data do I need to keep? What do I archive? What are the regulations around the world? How do I secure this data? So just very quickly, if I take a step back, you got your governance and quality and stewardship and MDM. You have your architecture, information architecture, right? Forgot to say analytics, obviously, right? And then you have your privacy and security, information governance aspects. And then it's about, if that's a bird eye view of all the things we need to think about, then in execution, operationally, how do we execute in a way that actually meets what we're trying to do with those? And each one of those pillars can have, you're talking about objectives and key results or KPIs or measures, right? In each one, it's not like there's one big measure or data strategy and that's going to tell me how well I do. We need to take it down a little bit and look at, okay, for analytics, what am I going for governance, what am I going for privacy and security, right? But all of those connect to that overarching strategy, and then we start measuring within the relevant things within that bucket. And for that point in time, where we are on our maturity journey, if you will, because this is a long journey, right? So anyway, I'm going to pause because I know it's a lot of things, but if I were to put this on a piece of paper and take it, there is a method to the madness, as I like to say. So yes, there is a lot, but just taking a step back, thoughtfully looking at it, and then thoughtfully executing against a plan, a meaningful plan, I think there is huge opportunities for organizations to benefit from this.
By the way, listening to you, I was thinking, if now whoever listened to us will not think that they need data strategy, that would be something wrong. Because you are really telling about that in a way that I cannot imagine that in the current time there are anyone who cannot let's say cannot have it. I mean, there is no possibility to not to have it. So it sounds like must have in the organization.
Elena, if I may say, especially nowadays, more than ever before, I think of data as the lifeblood of any organization. There's nothing we can do without data. And data takes a lot of different forms, by the way. And part of a data strategy is how you also get what I call the head of data, all of that tribal knowledge that people have in their heads. That's IP, that when they leave an organization, it walks out of it. So part of a strategy as well would be, okay, how do I actually cater to that and understand it and use in my organization so that IP does not walk out, right, out the door. So there's many different layers, but everything we do, everything we look at, the transactions, the master data, even body language in the organization, those are data points too. But from a culture perspective and transforming the culture so that we can better work together, because a data strategy to implement it, that journey is transformational because it is changing people's habits. So then we start talking a little bit about the ways we're working and the culture, what that means. But to your point, Lena, more than ever, also because even with AI, what's happening, the large language models or any kind of machine learning or generative AI, they look at data, so making sure that, here's how I think, when I think of a data strategy or if I think of a purpose, I usually think of it in three very simple terms. How can I trust the data that I'm looking at and I have it when I need it? It doesn't take me a week or a month to get to the right data. Can I trust it and have it when I need it? And are my operations set up in a way that I can be agile? Again, how can I streamline and be more efficient and get the most out of it? And can I scale? Because there's so much happening. We need to be able to scale quickly, right? Because there's a lot of change happening in the industry even. And to be competitive these days, if we're not leveraging what the data can tell us, or if we leverage it, but the data is giving us the wrong messages because we did not manage it correctly. The data is not wrong on its own. So we have to think about how do we manage it, not just process it through the pipes and write interfaces and move data from here to there. That's tactical operational stuff, and it's great, but it has to be part of the of a plan, right? So more than ever, this is absolutely key nowadays to help us thrive in this very competitive environment. Otherwise, we'll just be, like a hamster in a wheel. I keep on trying to catch up.
Yeah, seems like a lot to start with, because like covering all of those aspects in an organization that is like not a huge one seems like a challenge. So where do you start? Because you said that it's a journey, so it's obvious that I won't do everything at once, because I would just do nothing then implement the strategy.
Yes.
So imagine that we are like owners of the company and we have a hard time like defining strategy, because most companies, at least from my experience, have a hard time in defining the strategy and choosing the right direction, defining their policies, defining their strategic objectives for the next 2 to 5 years. So if you meet those kind of companies, how do you help them with data? What's the connection?
Thanks, Matt. I would say, so like I was saying earlier, for me, data strategy is about the business, not about the data. So what do you start? Start by very carefully, very thoughtfully understanding what are your business problems that you're trying to solve for, or what are the business opportunities that you're trying to bring about for your organization. Obviously, that's high level, right? So you got to start taking it one step at a time, go deeper, deeper, and deeper. And I know with the OKRs, Lena, I know I've seen you speak same methodology, same
Exactly.
approach, right?
And
Start big, but then
the same question: what are you doing? What are your business problems and opportunities in the market? That's why I'm smiling, because to me it's exactly the same. So actually, the first step, whoever is working or start working with OKRs, let's say, could be easier, because the first step could be done together. We always ask our question: why are we doing that, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So start with, what are you trying to do? What are you trying to solve for, right? And take it from there. I would say what I've seen over my career in organizations, sometimes you have people that are very passionate about this, right? And that is great. I mean, tactically speaking, there's different ways you can do it, but I would say don't forget, especially if you're trying to jumpstart, bring in some people that can help you jumpstart. I've seen mistakes, for example. In my mind, it's a mistake to say, you know what, my data strategy is, oh, I need a new customer data platform, or I need to, create a data lake years ago. That was, maybe now it's data lake house, right? And bring all my data there. And I push back, start with curiosity. That's another answer to your question, Matt. Start with curiosity, ask curious questions. Again, what are you trying to solve for? Why are you trying to solve for that? What's the purpose of it? Why that and not something else right now? How is it going to help us? Sometimes, not sometimes, very often, I've been in conversations throughout many years, throughout my career, right? These days is, as I speak to colleagues in the industry too, create data science, create a machine learning or data science engine, or bring all of the data in a data lake, and then would analyze it. And I go, or sometimes you see requirements, build me a data lake because I want to look at customer or whatever it is, right? And my question is, pretend you have a data lake. Pretend you have all of the data in the organization of that data lake. Pretend you have all of the data in the world too. What are you going to do with it? What is the business problem you're trying to solve? Because I'll tell you what, it is a lot more efficient and effective when we put that thinking, which we're not used to, by the way. We're used to gravitate to bring me the technology or whatever the buzzword you think is out there, implement it, and that will solve it. No, take time to really understand within that business context what am I trying to do, because then rather than bring all of the data and then you don't know what to do with it, and even if you have an idea, you're looking for a needle in a haystack, right? Be specific enough to say, this is what I'm trying to solve. So figure out what data, let's say it's a KPI. I want to do something analytics, let's say, about my business. Maybe it's about my customer. Maybe it's about my products. Okay, great. What are we trying to figure out? Let's figure out the relevant data points. Now, let's figure out who do we need to come across, because a lot of those analytics also involve data like customer or product or supply, which is enterprise master data. It goes from system to system, and that's where we don't speak the same language. And we got to get people together to start thinking of it the same, speak the same language, and then get it at a good data integrity level, right, with the data quality. But let's focus on those and bring that data so that in the data lake. So you know what they say? We use about 20% of the data we have. So why are we carrying around the rest of the 80% and we're burning so many cycles on processing all of the other data? So again, be specific, be curious, ask questions. How am I going to use it? Why this? Why this now? Right? How does it help my company objectives? You start from there, and obviously taking it layer, you keep on going deeper layer by layer. Obviously, allowed to speak here, but yep.
We will go there. I'm really happy that some guests together with us, and we have a question from our what is the name of that? From Przemek. So I hope, Dora, you also can answer that. Which tactic seems to be better? Hire analysts to train employees so that they can collect data and draw a conclusion on their own, or maybe hire analysts temporarily at the beginning to teach the organization how to acquire and interpret data. So quite a deep question, not basic, but I think we can jump in a bit there. Thanks, Przemek, for the question.
I appreciate the question, and this is an important question because I'm sure it's in many people's minds, right? Here's what I would say. I would say definitely look for your organization what the needs are, what kind of talent you already have internal or you don't, right? I would say that typically you want to get where you have gaps, you can hire that talent, right? But then at the same time, make sure you bring your people along, you train them or hire them, because that hard talent eventually is going to go away. But I'm also going to say this. When we're talking about analysts and training employees, the question sounds that we're focusing more on the day-to-day operational, and that is extremely important. So all I'm going to say is make sure that whatever we're hiring those analysts for, or we're training the employees, those skills, for example, here say to acquire and interpret data. We need to do that. Let's just make sure that we acquire and we interpret the data for the right reasons. Again, how does it fit back to that overall goal that we have? How is it going to help my business? And not just for that project. That project, again, right, needs to fit into an overall strategy. Why are we doing this? How is it going to help us? So I would say it's not one answer fits everything. Usually it's both, because I haven't seen anyone that has all of the talent internally. You need to bring the talent from outside as well for where the gaps are for the organization. Might be different talent depending where your organization is, but then bring your people along, as well. And that way you put yourself in a situation that can sustain. Yeah. Hopefully that helps.
Thank you. Przemek, let us know if you get the answer. Yeah, but your turn.
Like listening to you, like previously, I had an idea that it all starts with the question, right? It all starts with the answer that you're looking for, because people very often come and say, "Hey, I need a report XYZ," and you start asking those questions like you did, like why do you need it? What decisions will you make based on the data from this report? And then the conversation starts.
Exactly. And, and I think especially when we were talking about business, BBC, the conference, right? There's many business analyst type of roles there, right? Which is such a critical role, I think, because you are in a position to have those conversations with the business functional folks, right? And really help them also get to that answer. Because the other thing that I've noticed over my career, different industries, different teams, sometimes people come and ask things and they don't really know what they want. So really, in a very active listening, guiding, facilitating the conversation, guiding the conversation, being curious, but also being empathetic. Now we're going to start talking about how you really get the most out of working with people, right? Which has to do with a lot about the leadership behaviors and the culture and everything, because that's important. You can't just go and ask and say, oh, okay, tell me why you do this. Yeah, why this, why nothing else? That's not how it happens, right? There's an art and a science to how you do that, right? And the point is that people sometimes come and ask because they think they know what they want. But we are a lot more successful when we work on our skills to have more effective conversations that can really help each other through dialogue and through curious questions get down to the bottom of it. A lot of it has to do with exactly what you said, Matt, right? What are we trying to solve for? And then you backtrack from there so that we stay focused. Because the other thing that I see as well, I've seen over the years, is when we start and we're trying to like boil the ocean, as they say, we start big. You can't do it. If I do a little bit of 100 things, it's going to not really drive the value that we're looking for, versus I say, I do need to do 100 things for the organization. These are all critical and important, but then we're going to take a step back and prioritize in a phase roadmap and say, you know what, instead of doing 20% of 100 things, I'm going to do 80% or 100% of these 5 things. And these are really going to drive value because it's going to be complete. I know what I'm going for and I will do it. On to the next thing. And at the same time, building the foundational elements of how we manage the data as part, implementing the data strategy. So yeah, prioritization and knowing what's important, which again, the prioritization, what is the organization trying to do from a business perspective? Not from a data perspective, from a business perspective.
I'm actually wondering, is she talking about data strategy or business strategy? Because I lost the same questions.
The two are connected, right? So there's so many aspects in terms of data strategy that are specific to data, how I manage it. If we go into the specific practice, how do I do MDM? How do I do governance? How do I do architecture? How do I do data quality, right? How do I safeguard data so there's no breaches, from a security perspective? There is best practices, there's frameworks, there's practical application of how I do that operationally in practice, specific to data. That's the core domain expertise that your data professionals are bringing to the play, right? But all of that, again, I'm going to do that because from a business strategy, I know if our business strategy is we want to expand into a new region in the world versus with the products we have, versus I'm trying to innovate and come up with a number of new products in the market that I am, that's a different business strategy. So with my data, I'm also going to focus on different things, right? I'm going to focus about how do I understand more about the customer, the segmentation, the region, making sure that all of the data around there, I can trust it, I can get to it again. What other technology that will data specific, data management specific to help me with that do I bring in, versus here focusing on, the product lifecycle and different kinds of things. So again, there's the core domain expertise around data and operationally, tactically, how we execute that strategy, but it needs to connect back to what we're trying to do from a business strategy perspective.
Yeah, and because you probably seen companies that just started with the data strategy or even didn't have any data strategy, and you helped them build the strategy. You've seen companies that functioned with mature data strategy in place. So what's the difference when you compare those two? Like, I'm asking the question to see how does it iterating on the strategy looks like when you have this data strategy in place for some time, that it's quite mature and that it's quite usable.
So
Right.
what we mean is actually there are already some answers and questions, and there are already data, and we have this decision made, and like how it looks one step ahead.
Sure. Okay. What I'm going to say is what I said earlier, this is a journey, right? So this is not easy. So even if you're doing great in some aspects of your implementation against that data strategy. You might be a little further ahead in some aspects, a little further back in other aspects, right? So if you are one of the lucky ones that are pretty mature along the way, then like say level 4, level 5, by the way, I haven't really seen an organization that it's a level 5 on all aspects of a data strategy. Think of like a very typical five level maturity curve, right? But the thing to think about, if a lot of the best practices are already in place that have been operationalized, we're pretty mature on a lot of the fronts of the strategy, I would say it's important to realize that ongoing, we have to keep it going. There's new people coming and going. Making sure that we're actually, when they're coming in, they understand what we're doing. It becomes part of culture. Remember what I said earlier, data is an afterthought. There's a lot of work and it's a transformation journey to, the mindset and the ways of working and the things that we do when we implement data strategy. Like make sure the new people coming in understand that, right? And they're part of that engine, if you will. But also part of that, how you iterate through that when you're in a pretty advanced, I would say also keep abreast of what's happening in the industry. Maybe there are advancements out there, and like for example, these days with generative AI or LLMs like ChatGPT and other large language models, what's happening is it's going fast, right? So it doesn't mean I have the strategy. In other words, it's a life thing, because the organization, it's a life thing. It's not I do it today and 10 years later I'm still having the same strategy. We need to be cognizant of what's happening in the market, in the industry, from the functional business strategy, business side, as well as the technology that helps enable through the data a lot of what we're doing. So it's different things. And then how do I monetize more of it? How do I use it? Because it's a lot of work to get to that point where I get mature. So then now that I have good data and I can get to it when I need it, and I can do it in an efficient manner operationally, and I can scale easily. Remember, those are the things that I said, that's kind of like my goals. Okay, so how do I use all of that right now to scale more? Grow, bring you revenue opportunities, right? Grow my organization. What do I need to do more? If I expand to new regions, are there perhaps regulations that I need to know of? How do these connect to my strategy? Do I need to change anything? New technology to help me. So the point is, it's not a one and done. This is a living, breathing thing. There's a lot of work earlier on. And it really depends on the organization where you are on that journey, on that maturity journey. Because it is an ongoing effort. It's just more harder at the beginning, because until you hit critical mass and get the people to understand that implementing a data lake or saying that a couple of years ago, I'm doing RPA with my tasks and my data, or now I'm doing machine learning and AI, that's not going to solve your problems, right? Or I bring in a tool that everybody talks about in the industry, that's not going to solve your problem. So there is a lot of mindset and habits change early on, and it's harder from a data literacy. Sometimes I think of it as a data fluency, which, by the way, I should have said earlier, that is a very critical component of a data strategy. How do you bring the people along? And for me, data literacy, data fluency, it's less about I'm teaching you how to use that tool. That's not what literacy is in my mind. In my mind is, now that everybody has been used over the years to do what they're doing, and usually organizations have a lot of different silos, teams doing whatever they're doing, right? And they're very comfortable. How do we actually get people to understand that we need to come together? We need to work together. That means what you were doing in your team, in your system, yes, it needs to, mesh with the other ones, merge with the other ones and see, well, how do we mean this? How do we define it? How do we want to manage it? So there's a lot of that transformation of habits every day. To me, data fluency is more about that, because you are raising awareness and understanding with the people what is important for them and what's in it for them, to start working with these other people, to start defining sales even. I've seen organizations that do not define sales the same way from division to division. That, they don't look at their product hierarchy the same. So how can you roll up financial statements if one commercial division says this product that I sold rolls up under, it's in this business unit, rolls up at this division, and another commercial team looks at their products and they're rolling it up, they're looking at the same division here being part of a different legal entity, right? How do you roll that up for financial statements to say, yep, this is what my sales are per division, when you don't speak the same language? So that is a lot about data and implementing a data strategy, which means you've got to raise the awareness. For us to get to that point, to have good data, to roll it up, let's say for the financial statements, we've got to get these people across the divisions and the teams to work together, to start defining what the divisions even are, at what level, right? So that's part of data fluency, data literacy in my mind, and that's a lot of work. And you do a lot more of that in the first few years, because once you hit a critical mass, I think it gets easier, right? And it's more about bringing the new people in, and they if the culture is, you're not in the back of your hand and everybody's thinking that way, then it's about bringing in the new people and then leveraging the fruits of your labor. How do I now get what my data is telling me? How do I get more value out of it? Can I monetize it? Do I learn something more? Is it showing me a new opportunity that we should focus on?
I'm
Things like
still listening to you, Matt. Tell me, like, I really have an impression that maybe we do not name that. I mean, or maybe we before that with Matt, at least from my side, we didn't name that, but I somehow feel that the data strategy is a really very important part of business strategy. And it's like, to me, it sounds like it cannot live without itself together. And I'm a strategic person, but I'm also an actionable person, right? So now I would like to go a bit deeper and to share with our listeners also some kind of tool or good practices. I have in mind, for example, when we come into organization and work with managing directors and we set with them strategic goals, there are often, some need of providing some measures, indicators to measure that. And I'm thinking here, what is your best practices, or maybe, even tool recommendation, including even maybe habits like meeting or whatever with some stakeholders, how to measure that, how to keep it on track, and how to make sure, that we can monitor it, because for us, it's very important to constantly monitor it. So, for example, monthly really meeting with all stakeholders who are accountable for these metrics and checking are we in the right direction or not, and, do this lessons learned exercise. And I'm thinking, to me, what you are saying is a kind of the data strategies from the first point of view. It's a like collaborating together, so these two things to me working together, and in the same time this operational tactical part of the implementing of data strategy support very much the business strategy. So my question is, this long long introduction to this question is, so what is your best practices if we have the strategic goals where are usually impact KPIs? So it could be different, depends on the direction of the strategy, and we need to measure it. We sometimes need to start and also show that in somehow way, dashboard, whatever. I mean, I'm here probably dreaming, but so how you do that? How you implement that even, and how you make sure that it's live there, that it's not dying, or it's not taking this never ending story. We didn't have the data, we didn't do that, we didn't have time to derive it, we don't know, we do it once a year, so we don't care, and so.
Lena, you're so right. Strategy without really having a very focused execution plan is just pretty stuff on a slide on a PowerPoint deck, right? It doesn't really have any value. On the other hand, if we just start executing tactical operational stuff without really, how does it fit in our bigger plan? Are we hitting the right things? And it's only going to go so further. So you're absolutely right. The two fit on each other, and we need to be very intentional about doing this. So from tools, I can speak about tools, but I think of tools not just the technology that enables us, makes it easy for us to track some things. But what you said too, Lena, the process around it, the clarity of who's accountable for what, and are we monitoring it? And are we holding people accountable? Now, I want to get a little bit more specific. And actually, that's part of how do you do it? Be specific. But as I was saying earlier, there's different pillars to a strategy. So let's say, one of the things that from a data strategy people are a lot trying to do these days is they're talking about catalogs, right? And that could be a tool that helps us track some of the measures. And a catalog means different things to different people.
Okay.
By the way, let me just make a little parenthesis here, everybody, because you said it earlier, strategy, we use the word, it means a lot, it means different things to different people. Data strategy, data governance, data management, catalog, all of these things, there's no standard. Chief data officers, people that you think of that, are there to manage all that for the organization. There's no standard definition for these things. So my suggestion is for your team, your organization, the very first thing to do that is very critical for being successful, get everybody together and agree, this is what data strategy means for us. This is what data governance means. This is what a catalog means. So I'll close that parenthesis. I'm going to start giving you some specifics, right? Say data catalog means different things to different people. When I think of a data catalog, I think of tools that can help me on the data governance aspects. For example, I can create business glossary collaboratively, with, like I said earlier, what does sales mean for this division versus that division? What does product hierarchy mean, right? How do I define it? Where do I go? Who do I go talk to if I have something? Then I might want to go and check data quality. Is the ERP system of this team and the ERP system of that team, they're having, let's say, product hierarchy in the actual data records, right? What is the standard for that? What does it need to look at? What are the different levels, Or I'll give you a more simple example. Let's say I'm looking for data like I'm measuring when I'm selling a product, if it's an each, individual or a piece, is this one and the same across the systems? What is the standard? So I can use data quality capabilities in tools that could go under the catalog name, right, to measure and monitor that. So then you have data quality specific metrics. You can also do end-to-end, Lena, so that if something changes, think of like a spaghetti thing, right? If I pull on something where everything is connected, what breaks? So if I have my end-to-end lineage and all of the mapping, there's tools there that help me say, okay, what breaks, right? So if I look at that, there are specific metrics, specific for data quality. And you can start with very simple things operationally, how many terms, very simple metrics. How many terms did I validate with all of the business and technical stakeholders and I publish? How many data quality, but then how's my data quality looking? Is the quality of my product hierarchy across all of the different systems in the organization that are critical that we targeted to look at, is that trending better or worse, right? So you have metrics like that and measures. So there are tools like that that can help you. But in addition to that, and then, by the way, if I take a step back and I think more strategically, even some of the AI tools can help you say, oh, where do I have gaps? Am I focusing on the right thing? So to answer your question, if we're working on the literacy, for example, with this, we can say, how many people did I get on here? How many users? Which could be an indication of how am I doing with my data transformation, because if I get people on that platform to actually use it, and let's say I have business glossary capabilities, and I get people across the organizations to work together, and we publish more, that means they collaborate. That means that fluency, that literacy is doing better because I have more people actually engaging actively, and I can get that metric out of those tools, right? So the point is, depending what area we're working at, figure out exactly what we're trying to measure. There are tools like that can help us, but the tool alone is not going to do it. Back to your point before, Lena, because that's really critical. Knowing who does what, who's going to monitoring, who are we keeping accountable to actually look at what the tool after we set it up is telling us, and do we need to action it, right? And be intentional about it. And that's, so to me, those structures around it is part of the way you go about it. I call that part of tools. It's not just
So
technology.
ownership again, actually, ownership and ownership. Yeah, we repeat it quite often. The same. Yeah.
Okay,
It's
so basically, you're talking more about creating a communication platform than using any specific tools, right?
Yeah, Matt, you know what I found over the years? The very basic, like business 101. It's like have a RACI. What are we doing? Who does what? How do we communicate it? Make sure that you communicate. You know about communication sometimes in real estate, here in the US, I'm not sure if in Europe they do that, but here in the US, they say location, location, location when it comes to real estate. I'm thinking the same thing about communication, communication, communication. You can never communicate enough, right? Because people need to hear the same thing multiple times, different ways for it to stick, right? And if I do great work, but nobody knows about it, guess what? I'm not really helping move the needle for my organization. So you bring such an awesome point about communication and just the fundamentals of managing these things. There's a specific data domain expertise, but then you have to manage it, or it won't just happen by itself. And keeping
Okay,
that pulse, monitoring it. Yeah.
yeah. So basically, by creating a coherent strategy, data strategy, you're enabling people to really talk the same language across departments, to use the same language because they have a dictionary that they can use. So basically, you enable them to talk like compare apples to apples and talk about the same thing in with the same manner, so they understand it equally well across departments, across organizations. So instead of focusing on understanding each other, they're focusing on making valuable business decisions, right?
Absolutely. And I know we're almost at time, so I think it's also critical to say here that for this to work, especially you can have large organizations or medium-sized organizations with thousands of people or tens of thousands of people. The model too is kind of like almost like a hub and spoke, where one person or one team cannot do it all. Doing totally distributed style, everybody in their way cannot do it. So how do you have a method to the madness? Have a framework, have some people that can actually have the accountability of making sure everybody understands how we do things in the different areas under the overarching strategy, and helping people, facilitating that work, that conversation, that execution, focused execution after against what we're trying to do, but then everybody also doing it in their areas, but it all connects back to that thoughtful plan, and you got that ownership of driving that for the organization. So those aspects of it, for how you implement it in a large organization, that's also critical, right? And I tend to think that the hub and spoke model is the better one in my experience.
And when working with organizations that already gather some data and have strategy in place, what tools do you need? Do you see most often? Because I understand that there is a like Power BI or something similar. There is some data lake or any data storage. So what tools do you use most often or see?
You mean like actual tool?
Yes,
So there's
yes.
a lot of tools, right? I mean, these days, and these days, yes, with data lakes, there's the Databricks and the Snowflakes and the Microsoft Azure, and you have SAP, you have Oracle. I mean, every single vendor has their own tools out there, and there are on the analytics side, there are on the on the more on the data management, like data quality, data catalog types of tools, data governance types of tools, right?
Mm-hmm.
There are so many different vendors out there. I want to make this point because I don't think there is one tool that's perfect for everything. And I think what's important for people to understand is you need to see where you are in your organization. And when we're looking at a tool, not only at the functional capabilities, but also how will it integrate from a technical perspective with what else we have? Because that tool is not going to be a lone island, right? It's going to come in and integrate with everything else in the organization. So from the functional capabilities to the technical capabilities to the supportability of that tool to the user adoption, how easy it is for users to use it, to adopt it, to the total cost of ownership. In my mind, I look at all of those things when I look at what's the right tool that's the right fit technology for the capability I'm trying to solve for, and it's the right tool for my organization. Because there's not one tool perfect for everybody, right? You gotta make it fit in where you are. That's why I'm a little hesitant to give specific go for that tool or the other tool, because it's not that simple, you know?
Yeah, I know.
Look at everything and make sure it fits in your particular case for what you're trying to do.
I'm actually smiling because I think it's so similar to what we are quite often talking, and we are also, often resistant to, really propose the concrete tool or practice to the organization before we know really a context. So that's why I'm listening to you. I would say, oh my God, I would spend another hour talking about some cases, and maybe this is the idea for, I don't know, next our common activity or whatever, because I think we also can, really discuss some examples from different, maybe different areas, because today we spend our time talking about basics, of course, and more like you're setting the same level of knowledge and, to understanding in the same way, data strategy, business strategy, how they work together, how to iterate it, how to really connect, where are the touch points. I see like it's not even touch points, it's like going in a parallel together. I'm even not in parallel, but really together, like hand by hand, like the best partners doing and supporting each other. So I would say, at least to me, that if we are wise organization, then to me, within the group of stakeholders who are working with the business strategy and monitor and iterate business strategy, there should be a person who is accountable for the data strategy. So let's say, without the part of small or big, actually, part of the organization. So to me, this is like main stakeholder also to co-create the strategy for the organization. Matt, do you have something in mind as a summary? Because we are going to the end.
Well, I'm stuck with this like communication platform in terms of data, because like from my experience, like people often need some kind of reports, but they don't know what they need or what questions do they need to get asked. But the moment that you introduce them to some common knowledge that everyone understands the same, then the magic starts to happen, because people, instead of asking general questions, they are going deeper and deeper into the business model of organizations. Like they start asking better questions when the data is in place. So this is what I heard the most, and this is what stuck with me. Like communication platform across different departments, different branches of the organization. Because, as you said, it's a very long journey, and it touches entire company, not only one department. Because you can't have a data strategy for a single silo, right? It touches like every department. So this is what I took out of this meeting the most.
Yeah, communication. I would say also the tools and the structures for how people are going to work together. If that's of value, I'm thinking it might be of value to the audience here. I'll share a link if you want to share it, Lena and Matt, to an article of OLS here, which is the top pitfalls that organizations fall in about the data strategy. Yeah, and when you say communication, you're saying people, Matt. Yeah, people. Technology, process, data, people. It all goes back to people. If people don't adapt it, they don't do it. And then communication helps with that, specific frameworks and practices help with that. You've got to bring the people along, right? So I think it will be a good reference for the audience here. A lot of the things that some of the things that we covered anyway, happy to share that. But absolutely, that's critical.
Wow. I don't know again where the time was, but that's always with you, Dora. I mean, I really love listening to you. You are really amazing, also storyteller, and I think what is unique for you is you are technical person, and you are able to. But you said that you are also a business person. You are able to talk about that in a way which is understood for everyone, for both sides. So I really appreciate that. Even it's rainy here and I felt not so well today because of that. I woke up. So it was like, okay, no, I need, I was focused. So thank you for that. And guys, our audience, our friends also, let us know how did you like today's coffee, and if you have any questions, feel free to post them in comments in LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube, as we are streaming in these three locations. So if there will be a question, Dora, I will post it for you. Hope you will answer for sure. And appreciate so much that you was here today with us. I still cannot believe that it happened because I remember, 2 months ago when we discussed that, I would like to really have you here, and now it's happened. Thank you, Dora. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you for having me. It was really a lot of fun this morning for me. Anyway, having the coffee with you guys. Appreciate some engagement from the audience. The question. Thank you. It's actually my honor to be here. And I appreciate you having me on. I'm glad. And you're right, Lena. The time flew by. We spoke about doing this a couple months ago, and here we are.
Yeah, so thank you. I'm ending broadcast right now, and see you later, guys.
Yeah,
Bye
thank you,
bye.
Dora. Great having you here. Bye bye.